Welcome to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk, a show about ancient coins from the viewpoint of a seasoned professional with nearly 30 years' experience. Here's Aaron Berk and Mike Nodelman on the Ancient Coin Podcast.
And it's time for the sound of. And the sound of that gong means that it is time for the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk. I'm Mike Nodelman.
I'm Aaron Berk.
And, our gongliness is with us today. On today's episode, we are going to talk about some auctions that are coming up over the next month, give you some nice Christmas shopping ideas. We are also going to talk about our Doofus purchase of the week, as well as talk to you about, what's the educational about?
It's about Divas.
Divas, as well as give you one of our pearls of wisdom for your necklace of knowledge. So, Aaron, what is it in the auction world that is getting you excited right now?
Well, we're getting ready to go into the January auction, so that's not quite, but coming up. But some of them have already been showing up, and we'll profile them in an upcoming show after this one. But I know Triton is already out, and a couple of others have started to pop up. But so there isn't a whole lot going on at the moment. But I did decide to profile an auction house we've never talked about before. We like to do that on this show
Yes,
auction houses that haven't come up before. We're going to talk about Lugdunum, which the Lugdunum mint is which is mentioned in Roman times. If y'all don't know, that's from France, is where Lugdunum was at the time. So Lugdunum is run by a very cool guy. Used to work for one of the other European firms. Can't think of the name of it. And then he went off of his own. And this is maybe a second or third auction, maybe more. But this auction is going to be December 14th. There's 634 lots. And I thought I would give him a get-go because there's something very interesting he does as well, which you may or may not know about. So let's get into his a little bit. The first one I want to talk about is Lot 14, Mike.
Lot 14.
So we've profiled these before. These are these Leiny tetradrachms. What's really interesting about this group is that there have been a lot of fakes of these in the marketplace. There are some people that feel that all of them are fake. Some feel that a percentage is fake. But this hoard came out in the 1980s, and I believe NFA was one of the first to offer them. And the thinking is that they actually made dies from the coins at the time and made fakes from them, and were offering the fakes alongside the original ones, which is dirty, but it did happen.
Well, it makes it so that you can't tell the fake ones.
Right. And so I like to get ones that have older pedigrees. Now, I did have one maybe a year or two ago that I had seen had come through an NFA sale, which NGC had condemned as fake. So it does happen that some of the older pedigreed ones will be considered fakes. And there's some people that just completely stay away from them altogether. But I kind of feel like if you've got an older pedigree on one, or has been vetted, it's not much to worry about. This one came out of a 1988 auction from Roush. But I more or less wanted to bring it up because of the fact that you should be aware to not necessarily buy these at some obscure auction house, because there's a chance that it could be fake. Make sure whoever you're buying this type of coin from, or any of your coins for that matter, that they are going to give a guarantee on them, and that they're going to stand behind the coins, and that they have somewhat of a reputation.
Strike on this coin is exceptional.
They all come in state, every single one of them. They're very rare that they're the hoard itself was, you got to remember, silver coins are treasury coins. So this was literally a treasure group, and they were all mint state. None of them were ever in circulation. And so they all kind of have the same look. They all have the same strike. And so it's funny when you see one that gets a star, because honestly, if NGC, for the most part, they're all about the same, unless you get one that's a little bit maybe more off center.
Well, it just seems to me it's just really the depth of strike on it is really good.
Yeah, I love this type. There's one of the artists that actually did it. It's the Master of the Bay Leaf, I believe, did one of this type, and they're also quite nice. But any of the Sicilian coins from this period are going to be really beautiful, and this one has has everything that you'd want. So you just got to make sure that you're buying the real deal, I suppose.
And let me be clear for, the beginners. It's like, so what you're saying is that gold and silver coins are going to be more likely found in better condition because they were kept better. They were treasury coins.
Yeah, they weren't spent. So for
Okay.
the same reason why you're not going to find a $5,000 or $10,000 bill in our U.S. currency in terrible worn condition. I mean, it can happen, but generally larger denomination notes of the United States were used to transfer wealth around because we didn't have wire transfers. So if you think about larger gold and silver coins like this, they were used to transfer wealth around. And so the general public didn't necessarily handle these. They did some types, some periods, but in general, you'll find a lot more gold and silver in excellent condition. So for that reason,
it's interesting to know.
Go to the next coin, lot 58. Excuse me. So
more wine.
What's that?
More wine.
More wine, or in this case, for Jewish ritual. So here we have, this is part of the Jewish wars against the Romans in the First Jewish War. It was 5 years, and year 1, year 4, and 5 are quite rare. Year 2 and 3 are the most common. These always come in state, generally speaking. It's very unusual for them to be worn. These were treasury coins in every sense of the word. Mike, I don't know if you want to bring the video up of this.
Sure.
But you'll notice the planchets, when they prepared them before striking, they actually pounded the edges. So you'll see little pound marks on the edges. And that's usually a good reason that the coin is original. It's a good sign when you see the edges, because the way that they prepared is they actually it almost has like a squared off, as they were kind of preparing it, they were kind of hammering the edges. And so it has that that look to it. So if you see something that's a little off with the edges in that regard, then chances are it might be a counterfeit. So,
yeah, that's not a seam. That's literally an edge from where the silver was hammered.
Correct. And if you look on the reverse of this coin, you'll see that darkness in the upper, like 11 o'clock area. That would have been what the coin was completely covered in when it was found. It would have been really dark and encrusted, and with that heavy incrustation. And so it was cleaned chemically to be able to remove and get it back to its white coloration. And so, but originally it would have been really dark. So you will find these with the dark patina still on them from the ground. But again, these always come in state. And the reason I wanted to point this one out was because of the edges. And I don't think we had ever discussed that on Jewish war coins before.
I was going to say, no, I've never seen that. And so this one is dated year 3, which means it's a little bit more common.
2 and 3 of the year of the wars was where they produced the most material. Year 1, 4, and 5 are the rarest. Year 4, I would say, is even rarer than year 5. And there's some controversy which we talked about in earlier shows on year 5, but because there's what's called the Baldwin specimens, which we talked about on earlier shows, and that's where they found, I want to say it's 20 or so of these year 5s in the basement of Baldwin's. And there's a lot of famous coins that were found in the basement of Baldwin's, like from hundreds of years ago. And so, it's, it was deemed that they were all fake, and that's why they were there. And then they were all deemed to be real because there was one that was in the British Museum with the same dies. And so there's some that are on the fence saying that they're fake and some that's saying that they're real. And so the ones that are non-Baldwin year 5s go for a ton more money than the Baldwin issues. So, but again, these year 2s and year 3s, they are probably the easiest to get for the money. year 1, 4, and 5 very difficult. So.
And I mean, these, they're nearly 2,000 years old. These are pretty good shape for something that's seen that kind of history.
Yeah, but again, they were probably in a jar, and they were buried and never spent. And so they are going to look, if as long as they were cleaned properly, they're going to come back to their as they were 2,000 years ago.
Sure.
So, and that's what's beautiful about what Mother Earth will do to house these things and to keep them looking beautiful. So sometimes it can be terrible on the coins, and sometimes human beings can be terrible on these things.
Well, I mean, human beings are terrible to most things.
Right. But it can be before or after they come out of the ground. So just depending on who gets their hands on them and how they're conserved, essentially.
Sure.
People always say, like, has this been cleaned? But yeah.
Well, yes, they've all been cleaned. I mean,
they've all been cleaned.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next lot 107, I pulled this because a really unusual coin of Octavian. So remember, Octavian was who Augustus became.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Octavian, or it was Augustus before he became Augustus, because he became Augustus in around close to the end of this circulation in 27 BC. So this was minted just before he became Augustus, a couple years before. And what's really cool is that during this time, before there was the civil wars going on, and after Julius Caesar's assassination, you have Augustus starting to mix himself with gods. Mm-hmm. And so it was something that kind of started with Julius Caesar a little, and then Octavian started to do it, and it kind of went from there. And so you have this wonderful portrait of Augustus as Jupiter, and then behind Jupiter you can see there's thunderbolts behind his head there.
I was wondering what that was.
Yep. And then on the reverse you have Augustus seated holding a victory, and he's saying Imp Caesar. So he's saying he's a victorious Caesar.
Yes, he is the imperator.
Right. And he's mixing himself with the god Jupiter. So it's a very, very cool period right before Augustus, the first Roman emperor, takes hold, and a very cool reverse type and a beautiful portrait. Remember I talked about portraits, sculpture. This could be a beautiful sculpture. See how beautiful it's rendered, how nice proportionate it is. I would say the same for the reverse with the obverse for sure.
Well, I mean, and despite the little bit of corrosion that there is on the cheek, it still looks really nice.
Yeah, and that might be more of a hot spot. I didn't look at it in the video. Sometimes those white spots could be the hot spots from the photography. You have to look at the video to see if that's the case or not.
I'm pretty sure this is corrosion.
It's corrosion? Okay. I didn't look at the video, so I'll take your word for it, my friend.
Thanks.
So what's really cool, again, so that's the Lug Denum auction. The gentleman who started it, his name is Jonas. He actually started a research site called Numis. So if you bring that up, Mike, this is was the very first of its type done in Europe, and where he was actually training AI to be able to look up pedigrees through images. And so you can buy credits with him, and I believe the way it works is you only pay if he gets a hit, and if he gets a hit that's pre-1970, you pay a little bit more, and if it's after 1970, you pay a little less. But he basically has scanned a lot of the major auction catalogs in Europe, and you essentially can try to look up an old pedigree by just submitting a good image to his site.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And so he was the very first to kind of do this type of technology. More and more are starting to do it. I know somebody who's training AI to do it right now, and doing and I've seen some of the work, and a lot of it has to do with what they can scan. And the way it was explained to me is that an image is basically just numbers. So and so basically they take those number ranges, and then they put it up against their database of numbered images and look to see if there's anything that has matches, and they'll give you a certain amount of hits within a percentage, and then you can decide whether or not that's it or not. And then the AI learns over time what makes more sense and what and how to get more accurate hits over time. And so
resolution is going to be the limiting factor on it.
it is. And we already have a lot of that going down now. You can take pictures with your phone and it can identify specific sites
Yes.
and other things. And so coins will be no different as well. There's even discussion now that with AI as well. And we talked about AI and coins on a couple, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 shows ago. But they're going to be able to, and this will be very helpful for ancient coins. They're going to be able to take a database like my Harlan Berk database, and they're going to be able to take the images against the database, and we'll be able to upload images, and the AI will attribute the coin for us because we'll already have 100,000 plus data entries, and they'll basically take our database and find the coin and all of the elements and all of the legend and be able to write it up properly. So we won't have to catalog coins as much. We still will, because we're still going to have that human touch to it for a while, but it's going to speed up the game drastically over time.
Well, it's going to change the game entirely, but it's going to take time to do that. It's only as good as the database, and the database is going to take time to build. So,
right.
Once you have it, though, it's going to make things really, really amazing.
Right. And, in ancient coins, obviously pedigree is super important, and we've talked about the reasons why. In U.S. coins, it's not so important. And so there has never needed to be a push. In fact, I've said to some of the guys in the store, and I'll say, why don't you post that pedigree? And they're like, because nobody cares. I'm like, well, I think it's kind of cool, And so it's just interesting, somebody will post the Eliasberg because that was a famous collection, but
sure.
Some other ones they won't. And I think it's kind of,
we've highlighted specific dealers. As well as owners.
I suppose, but it's just not the same as it is for ancient coins.
No, it's nowhere near the same.
Yeah, the legitimacy of the ownership is more important when it comes to ancient coins than it does with other types of coins. So, but I'm seeing it even more with world coins. Depending on where the coin's being offered, if it's a coin that's indigenous to that country, maybe the country doesn't allow it to get exported, even though it's not an ancient coin, because they just don't want to see it leaving, because that's part of their history. So it does happen. So anyway, I wanted to point that out. So if you haven't noticed, Mike and I are wearing.
Hold on a second. Let me get back to us.
The Ancient Coin Podcast hats.
Very nice. These are nice hats, too.
They're actually really nice hats. Actually.
These are really nice hats.
I think probably maybe in our next episode, we'll do a contest, and we'll give away a couple of free hats. I think
sounds like
cool.
Fun. Yeah.
And we'll probably run it through, maybe on YouTube in the discussion or something like that. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, maybe we'll pick something out of the comments.
Yeah, out of the comments for sure. But if any of you, and eventually we might make them for sale, but I haven't thought about it yet. But I thought it'd be kind of cool. And so
I will tell you this. If these hats get mass produced, they will not be like these. They will likely, these are really nice. You went way overboard on these. These are nice hats.
Yeah, these hats cost me like close to $40 a piece. So they weren't cheap, but they're really nice quality.
They are. That's one of the nicer hats I've got.
And so we're going to get into our Doofus section. And so it's really cool.
Okay, here, yeah. Don't be a doofus.
Of course, it's backwards probably, but it says...
Actually, no, I think yours is good and mine's backwards, but that's okay.
Got it.
One of the two of us is correct.
If it's not. So anyway,
it is what it is.
Doofus. Watch the Ancient Coin podcast with Aaron Berk. That's going to be our slogan.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, let's get into the Doofus, which it's kind of an odd one. Recently...
Pegasus. Pegasus.
Yeah, so Nomos has been offering this very famous collection of fractions the last couple of auctions, and so many of them went for really crazy prices. I thought this price was insane for this piece, and the reason why is, and just to give you an idea, is that this coin brought $250 in the lawn sale in 2001. And so,
Wow.
yes, it's 20 plus years ago. I get all that. But a lot of these fractions, this is only a dioval. So you have oval, then, it goes up from there. And dioval is one of the smallest coins. You can see it only weighs 0.84 grams.
Hmm. It's
It's
tiny.
it's tiny. So there's a reason why these fractions don't generally bring a lot of money. And you can see the estimate was 350 Swiss francs. It brought 10,000 Swiss francs, not including probably 23%
Hmm.
buyer's
Buyer's fee.
fees. Okay. And um, I looked there, it's a rare coin. Okay. It's probably the finest for its type, but there was at least 3 to 4 others of this type that were a little bit more worn, but they were only bringing like $200 and $300. So, if it was the only one in existence, I might somewhat understand, but this is just two people fighting over it because they had to have it. And
Yeah,
they,
this is
they
two people that had more money than gumption to go and look for another one.
Right. In fact, there was a better type that actually sold in one of the earlier normal sales, where on the reverse, it has a frontal Pegasus flying towards you. That was cool. And
Oh,
that
I'm
brought a lot of
sure.
money. But to me, that was almost unique. And so when you're thinking about, you know, um, in fact, one of the areas I would say that a lot of collectors should go after if they can't afford normal silver coins in tetradrachms and larger denominations is to do fractions, because the fractions are really inexpensive. They're very cool. They're small. And so you kind of really have, you know, I mean, they're tiny, but you can obviously collect them for not a lot of money, and most of them sell for under $100 in most cases. So it's a really cool area to collect. It's just that you're dealing with coins that if you drop them, you might lose them.
Yeah, I'm just dumbfounded by how much it went for.
Yeah, and it's even corroded. So
Well,
it's
but
it,
still, it's one of the finest known. So I mean, you can give them at least a little bit, but
yeah, maybe,
but
but it sold for what it sold for
woof.
in Lons, which was realistically really, I couldn't see this. If somebody asked me what I thought this coin was going to bring, I may have said 2,500, and that would have been really crazy
Oh, I
on
was going to
top of
say
it.
more like 600.
No, I mean, it's a famous collection, and it's there's a lot of interest in these types of coins. And there's a couple of people putting together collections of these, and so they're paying real strong money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the BCD. So we've talked about that's Basil Dimitriadi. He's a famous collector from Greece. So, this was one of his coins, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So it's a well-known collection, well-respected.
yep. Yep.
Okay,
Not pre 1970. Not pre 1970.
right.
So it's not even that. So again, if this coin was slabbed, it would get terrible ratings. So because of the surface.
Well, do you think maybe that's why it's not in a slab?
Well, I think that, like I've talked to collectors who have really beautiful collections, and I tell them, like, well, if you sell through an auction house like Heritage or Stacks or somebody that has to have everything in slabs, you're gonna do really well on a couple coins, and you're gonna get murdered on on most of the other coins.
Yeah.
Because if you deal in bronze coins, or if you have a large collection of bronzes, chances are they're gonna call most of the coins smooth. And I have a big problem with some of that, because there's a difference between tooled and smoothed, and it's a matter of how far it goes. And it's really hard to clean a bronze coin and not have some kind of smoothing. Tooled is a whole different ballgame. Tooled is creating a design that's no longer there.
Right.
Or if the coin is really worn and you smooth it down to the point where you're trying to get a high relief, that's not something different. But when you get slight smoothing, where in the legend you can kind of see the darkness in the coin, and under the surface, and then you can see it's a little bit cleaner in the void areas. That's smoothing. That's just part of the cleaning process. So it's very difficult to get a bronze coin that doesn't have some kind of smoothing on it. It's a there and but and I understand for the slabbing companies they got to call it out, but to call it out so often on every single coin, it seems a little counterproductive for the collector that's wanting to slab coins. So anyway, my 2 cents on there. So so yes, coins like this, a lot of fractions were used in circulation. They weren't treasury coins because they were so small. If you think about it, most people would have carried, the regular people could have carried a small fraction like this because that's what they could afford. So there was a lot of them, and they were used, and so there's a lot of worn ones. And so the reason is because they weren't treasury coins. This is not how you transferred wealth around. This is what you used. If, for instance, you went to a different city, you may take a fraction of a coin of silver because that's what you could afford, go to the next city, and then transfer this into their currency to be able to spend money at that location. So these were used. In fact, they call some of these lip money because they were so small that they would actually put them inside the lip of their mouth and carry them around because it was easier to carry them around there where where they are than somewhere else.
Wow.
So, but it gives
That's
you
an
an idea
interesting
how small
story.
these things are. I mean, this coin's only 11 millimeters in diameter. I mean, that's really tiny, really tiny.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And obols come even smaller. So obols are about half that. So anyway, all right, I'm gonna turn my head on because that
don't be a doofus.
Just don't be a doofus.
That's right. All right.
I feel like I'm Superman.
Changing in a phone. Well, we'll get you a phone booth for next time.
There you go. There you go. So, Mike, that's going to bring us to our educational section.
Indeed, it does.
And so, I'm going to bring that up here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was waiting for you.
And are you there yet?
I am now.
Divus, the divine. So Divus is a word that appears on any ancient coins. It indicates the mark of concentration. So
what does that mean?
Meaning that they are not worshiping, they're celebrating the life of an emperor.
Okay.
So, and we'll give you examples of that. But basically, whenever you see the word Divus on a coin, it's mostly in the Romans because the Greeks really didn't put legends like that. Divus is really more a Roman phenomenon than it is Greek. But the Greeks did it through imagery, not through words. And that's true of Greek coins in general. They're all done with image and not with words. And so, Roman emperors will celebrate past emperors that were very popular. Ones to kind of align themselves with that past popular emperor, and also to just give thanks to those emperors as well.
So some of it was a political, on their part, trying to capture some of the love for that former.
Yes, for sure. So, if we want to go to the first one, we always have to bring up probably the most popular of all Greek emperors, which was Alexander the Great. And so Alexander, who died when this coin was first struck in 323 BC, he reigned from 336 to 323. So this was done under the Ptolemy the First, and here we have a portrait of Alexander wearing the elephant headdress. You can see the tusks kind of coming up and the trunk. And on the reverse, you have the symbolic Zeus that's on all coins of Alexander the Great. So
and an eagle and lightning bolts.
And lightning bolts and all of that fun stuff. So the coins of Alexander, they were issued with his likeliness on them for 200 years after his death, at least. But first off by the satraps or his generals who took specific regions. And in this case, Ptolemy was a satrap of Memphis, of Egypt, in Memphis. And so this was actually circulating in Memphis between 316 and 315 BC. So and yeah, I originally said it's circulation, but no. So Ptolemy the First took over Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 and reigned there through to 305. And then his line, the Ptolemaic Empire, lasted for 300 years to the end with Cleopatra before the Romans took it over. But here, Alexander, probably the most celebrated of all Greeks on coins for hundreds of years after his death. So if we go to the next slide, one of the very first Roman emperors, which really wasn't a Roman emperor, but the first one to do it was Augustus. And so here we have Augustus, and on the reverse of the coin, it says Divus Julius. So here it's celebrating the life of Julius Caesar. Augustus was his adopted son. And so here Augustus is, there's the famous comet coin on the top. And there was a comet that was actually going over Rome at the time, and they saw that as Julius Caesar's soul after he was assassinated. And so the comet became a symbol of his life, essentially. And if you look on the bottom coin, you have Augustus with Julius Caesar, and see the comet at the top of his head on the reverse. So
getting ready for impact.
Same symbolism again. Showing that Julius Caesar was a god, and here his soul is moving across the sky. So if you go to the next slide, we have Nero, and Nero is giving thanks to Claudius, who just came before him. So, and this is done on a coin of Antioch, struck between 63 and 68 AD. And beautiful portraits of Nero and Claudius on this. This is a tetradrachm, it's a large silver coin that were only issued in the Greek provinces.
Very similar look to the two gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you can kind of see it in the nose, the chin. Claudius's neck is much thinner and longer and more refined, and his chin is shorter, and so you get a good Nero and Claudius and all these Roman emperors. They always have a specific look that you kind of learn over time. So Nero or Claudius also had more of a hooky nose. See how it comes way down as well.
So,
and again,
let me get this right. Nero's on the left and Claudius on the right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Nero is on the obverse, Claudius is on the reverse.
Okay.
So, and again, if you're a popular emperor who reigned for a long time or a decent amount of time, chances are you're going to get one of these coins from a emperor after you. If you're not a popular emperor, you weren't around a long time, you probably won't.
Well, I mean, what's a long time, though? I mean, some of these guys were 3 years, 4 years.
I would say 5 years or more.
Wow.
In general. So, and then if you go to the next coin here, we have where Augustus is being thought of here. So the top coin, we have Caligula, and he has Augustus on the reverse. And on the coin to the bottom, this is an issue of Nerva, celebrating Augustus's life. On the obverse on the coin, it actually says Divus Augustus there. So even Augustus was so popular that several emperors were actually celebrating him for quite a long time.
Well, he was the first.
He was the first.
So I mean, that makes sense.
It does. If you go to the next slide, very famous coin, the Colosseum. And most of us always think of Titus as the one who actually issued this coin when the Colosseum was built, after he sacked the Jewish temple, brought all the money back, and then built the Colosseum with it. After Domitian had sent him there to actually quash the Jewish revolt. And this coin actually is not issued by Titus, but by Domitian. And there are only about 10 of these coins issued by Domitian. It actually says Divus Titus on the reverse of this coin. And but most of the ones that you'll see in the market are by Titus, not by Domitian. And so, in fact, we have one coming up in our next buyer bid sale where we're going to offer a Titus and a Domitian Colosseum together as a set.
Yes, I saw those two
that'll
coins.
be the first time that's ever been done in the history of numismatics, actually. That's
Yeah,
how rare these Domitians are.
They're beautiful,
Mhm.
those two coins.
Yep. So go to the next one. Here we have Trajan Decius, who is celebrating Trajan on coins. And so, and it even says Consatriel on the reverse, and says Divus Trajan on the obverse. And that's a portrait of Trajan. But this is actually done by Trajan Decius in between 249 and 251 AD. Just kind of going through the periods. If you go to the next one, Septimius Severus obviously had two sons, Caracalla and Geta and Elagabalus, and they were issuing coins after he died. And so the top one struck both under Caracalla and Geta in 211 when he died. And on the reverse, you have it's basically a structure called, I think it's Pyre, Pyre, I don't know the exact per. That's what it is, per. And basically, this is what the body was burned on.
Oh, no, that's a pyre. You're correct.
Pyre, okay.
Yeah, it's a funeral pyre.
I like to call it the Christmas, the birthday cake.
Great.
Always reminds me of a birthday cake. And you'll see this symbol being used quite a bit on bronze and silver coins from this period. But his sons are basically giving thanks to their father. So, and you'll see it on other emperors as well. And then finally, if you go to the last coin, we have the famous
Constantine. Let's try that again.
Constantine the Great. And so when Constantine died, they minted this coin for him. And so here you see Constantine with the death wrap around his head. And then on the
looking
reverse,
towards the heavens.
You have the hand of God coming down to grab Constantine from his quadriga.
Well, that's good, because those horses look like they're going to crush him.
Or he's just flying away with them.
Yeah.
So, and if you remember, Constantine the Great is the reason why we have Christianity in the world. He was the very first Roman emperor to take Christianity on his deathbed, and so here they're kind of showing that off on.
It's like a just in case.
In gold, obviously, very unique coin that never comes up. This was probably, I believe, maybe minted by the Senate at the time, right after his death, probably for a celebrational type of situation, not meant for circulation, obviously. And probably not a lot of these exist. But it's very cool to see where these coins are being celebrated by their descendants and the people who were left on this earth.
Yeah, it's neat that they paid homage to their forefathers, right?
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, this gold coin has
if you ever see Divus on a coin, it looks like it's issued by the person that's on the coin. It's not. It's issued by the person after, or even beyond that. So.
That gold coin, it has a really interesting patina to it, because it has all the copper showing, but I mean, that's just a natural thing.
It is. There's a famous hoard called the Bosco Reale hoard that is with this red coloration on all the Roman aurii. We actually talked about it on one of these episodes. I mean, hell, we're on episode 37. So
yeah, this was 37
at some point. But if you see Bosco Reale hoard, it'll have that reddish coloration in the legend as well. So that's our educational section, and
that leaves us with our pearl of wisdom, which I have to tell you, I'm very proud of you, because we've gotten through an entire episode without you railing on NGC for slabbing ancients. So that's good on you. So what's our pearl of wisdom for today, Aaron?
I did mention it once. I mentioned it's not always good to submit all coins.
I was trying to give you credit.
Sorry. Well, I'm just pointing out that I
Yeah,
did.
you're being honest.
But I was being honest. I wasn't, not downgrading them. I'm just talking about what's good to slab and what's not.
Right.
That's all. So, so our Pearl of Wisdom, and since we're going into a major part of the auction season, I thought it'd be, because I've had a couple clients ask me about this, and so I'm not going to go into names because that wouldn't be fair, but I think it should be known that you should beware the shenanigans of auction houses. Not all auction houses always play by the rules, and so you need to defend that as best you can and watch out for it as best you can. And some of you know who I'm talking about, and some of you don't have a clue and couldn't imagine that an auction house would break the rules. And when I mean break the rules, meaning they will shill or bid against you, meaning that they're creating a false narrative of what the actual market is producing at that time.
They're inflating the market.
They're inflating the market. They don't like a coin that's going too cheap, and so they bid against you, the high bidder, to raise the value of that piece so that it doesn't sell too cheap. So
When in actuality, they're really not raising the value of it at all.
no, it's false. It's a false market, false pretense. So I know that there are auction houses out there that now I'd have to say companies like Heritage and Stacks used to do it. They don't do it anymore. This is a long time ago, 20 plus years ago. They used to do it. They used to bid against people, but they don't do it anymore. Companies that have a lot to lose because it is against the law in the United States. I don't know if it's against the law in Europe. It may be, but definitely in the United States it is.
Yeah, in the U.S. it's fraud.
It's fraud. And so it's also fraud to, there's a lot of high-end collectors that carve up the auction beforehand. That's called, what do they call it? Divvying up the auction, I guess, what you call it. There's a term for them. I just can't think of it right now. But they would say the people who do that, they're just laying off specific coins for their friends, and not bidding against them. So they call it carving up an auction. That's what they call it, carving up an auction.
It sounded good.
Which is also, or ringing an auction. Ringing an auction. That's the proper terminology. And that's where you get a bunch of high-end, the highest bidders in the auction. They all get together before the auction and decide who's bidding on what, so they're not competing with each other.
Yeah, and they're colluding to save each other money and keep the prices and the market artificially low.
Right. And so, that's pretty hard to prove. And it's very hard to prove when an auction house is bidding against you fraudulently as well. But I know that there are specific e-auctions where it's done where if you put in your top bid and you always leave top bids with certain auction houses, you'll find that your top bids, and if you find out that your top bids are constantly being, you're hitting them all at the top all the time, chances are they're running your bids up.
Right.
So, because it's really unusual to have every single lot always be that situation. So
that does definitely raise red flags.
It does. And I know people have tested theories with certain auction houses where, well, I know one situation in particular where someone bid on $1,000 coin, they bid $20,000 on the coin just to see, and it sold to them for $19,000. And then they told the auction house, I'm not taking it. And the auction house said, fine. So it does, you can catch auction houses in certain situations, but it's not something I would test. You have to be somebody who's very important that they don't want to lose for you to be able to get out of your bid. And so, but what I always tell clients is when you leave your bid with an auction house, if you're not able to go there live, just make it reasonable. Don't go crazy. Go where you're happy to lose it for one bid over. Or if, let's say you want to pay $500 for a coin and you say to yourself, well, I don't want to lose it for $525, so I'm going to put in $600 and just let it go if it goes and not worry about it. If you put in $1,000, you might get it for $700 or $800.
Right.
And so, don't give them the auction houses slack. I guess, and
Well, I mean, that just goes back to don't be a doofus either. I mean, don't overpay for the coin.
well, but sometimes not your fault, right?
Right.
You have
Well, I
to,
mean,
like, I mean, if I'm bidding in a Sotheby's or Christie sales, I know that they're not going to run my bid. So I know there I don't have to worry as much. And I'm not putting in such a stupid bid, but I'm putting a strong bid in.
sure.
So I was bidding for a client on a piece and I left a bid of 20,000 and I got it for 15. So I know they didn't run my bid and I knew they wouldn't because they have too much to lose. They're a
Right.
$1 million company. They have too much to lose. But small auction houses, they do sometimes mess with it. And so you have to be really careful. If you're bidding in a live auction and it seems like you're bidding against somebody on the internet or on the floor, and then all of a sudden the auction house says, "Oh, that's our book bid. Can you give me one more?" Chances are that's the auction house
Yeah.
just messing with you.
Yeah, they're just
Because
jerking
how
you.
could you be bidding and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, that's our book bid,"
Right.
you know, and they're trying to get one extra bid out of you. If you say, "Okay, you're going to get it," but maybe in that situation you might say, "All right, I'll cut." Give them half the increment in that situation if you're able to do that. If
Well,
they
yeah,
say,
because then
"Oh,
you're
that's
not
our book bid," and you say, "Okay, fine, cut." Don't give them the full increment. Give them
right.
the half cut. You know,
Because
because
there's not another bid
that
after that anyway.
yeah, they're done.
Right.
You know,
No, that's smart.
so
I like that idea.
and so some people get really upset when they find out or they know that that's happening to them. And again, you just have to kind of know ahead of time, and not every auction house does it. So, I mean, one advantage we have with our catalog, with our buyer bid, is I don't have to do it because it's not an auction.
Hmm.
It's an offering. So somebody offers me X amount, that's the offer. It's not like I'm taking always below my asking price. So I don't have to. I don't have to worry about. I'm not shilling anybody. There's
Right.
nobody to shill. So that's one advantage I have with our sales. And again, I know who some of these auction houses are and some of them aren't. I'm not going to call anybody out because it's it's this is not
Counterproductive.
well, this is not a court of law.
Right.
But I also want people to realize that it does happen and that you should be really careful with your bids. And if you can do it live, great. But also know that there's a chance that somebody might have several bidder numbers that work for the company that you're bidding against. And so you just have to realize some of the shenanigans that happen and know not to chase something too far. If it feels dirty, it probably is.
Yeah. And know who you're buying from. Always know who you're buying from.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Now, a lot of clients like to give me bids or other representatives bids. One reason is because if I have a high worth client who the auction house knows already,
Hmm.
then they know that that guy or that woman, whoever the bidder is, has endless amounts of money. If they're a high net worth person, they know that they can drive their bids up.
Hmm.
But if they give the bid to a dealer, now they don't know who I'm representing. And so I might be just representing a person who maybe they're stretching on a piece that's $1,000. Maybe they're stretching on a piece that's $10,000. Who knows? They don't know who I'm representing. So they really don't know what my limit is and what I'm capable of. And so, and I have some clients that have very strong limits on how high they want to go, and I have some that aren't. And so it's really a crapshoot to the auction house. They don't have a clue at that point. But if they're bidding against a high net worth guy and they know it, they may play games. They may not let that go too cheap. So that's another reason why people will use auction representation for that reason, because it hides who they are from the auction house and other bidders for that
Hmm.
matter. You know, I mean, some collectors will say to me, "Did you buy that for stock?" Well, I might have bought it for stock. They don't know. I might have bought it for a collector. They have no clue.
Anonymity has its
So,
advantages.
yeah. So, and as a dealer, it's great because, like, look, if I get something cheap in auction, I can still make money on it myself. That's
Hmm.
great. But if I was, the people I'm bidding against, maybe they don't go any higher because they think I'm representing a client and they just don't want to push the client. Who knows? So there's a lot of advantages for me as a dealer as well as the collector as well. So, And also, maybe I might know the auction house and know what their shenanigans are, and know that I might talk to the client ahead of time and know, like, hey, we may not want to stretch too far on this, or maybe we want to stretch a little bit farther on this. So it just depends on the situation. And not every, again, I should point out, not every auction house breaks the rules. There's a lot of auction houses out there that are completely legit.
I was going to say, let's hope not.
Yeah, but I also, when I've talked to clients about some of the shenanigans with certain auction houses, they're really surprised. And so that's why it kind of gave me, wanting to talk about this and bring it to people's attention. So at least it's in the back of their head on how to react in certain situations. So.
Absolutely.
And that would be a good pearl of wisdom.
So that is our pearl of wisdom for today. And, it sounded the gong. So, wow, that's 37 episodes in the book.
Damn.
Yeah. And, we're back on the air. We had a little bit of a technical problem that happened last show. So we're back. I think the technical end of this is going to be tight, which is really good. Please give us your comments. Give us your comments. Tell us what you think. Be ready for a contest next show. And
if anybody does want to buy a hat, just reach out to me. I will do a contest next episode for one or two. But if anybody does want to buy one, I'm not going to push it on you. But if somebody does, just email me or mention in the comment or whatever. I'll sell to, I think they cost me $40 a piece. That's what I'm going to charge. I'm not going to try to make money on them. I mean, $40 is a lot of money for a hat already.
It is.
I'll have to go back and look. It was either 35 or 40, but with shipping and everything, I think that was close to that. So I might maybe I'll make them 35. I don't know.
They're nice hats. They're well worth the $40. I will tell you that.
Yeah,
that's one of the nicest hats I've had.
If I can get it down to 35, I will. I only had like 20 of them made originally. So, and here's 2.
And these are the originals. So these will not likely be done again.
No, I'll do it again.
We'll do other ones, but I doubt we're going to do these again.
I might.
Okay.
But my kids want them. So
everybody wants these hats. It's nice. All right.
It's funny. Anyway.
So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. And thanks, Aaron, for all your knowledge. Thanks for teaching me a little something about ancient coins. And hopefully you learned along with me. We will catch you next time on episode 38 of the Ancient Coin Podcast. You got anything else?
Nope, I'm done.
All right, we're out of here.
Please follow us on YouTube so you can get our episodes when we first post.
Yeah, and then like, share, and subscribe. So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk. We'll return with another episode soon. Meantime, you can join our private group on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search the Groups tab for Ancient Coin Podcast Discussion Group and ask to join. There you can become part of our community, where we share and discuss ancient coins, as well as the show, the ancient coin market, auctions, or just to give our own opinions on things in order to learn together. Join Aaron and Mike again soon for the next episode of the Ancient Coin Podcast with Aaron Berk.